You think you're making choices. You're not. You think you're reacting to life as it happens. You're not. You're repeating. You're repeating patterns. The same arguments, the same relationship dynamics, the same financial ceiling, the same emotional triggers, the same internal doubts, different faces, same structure. And what's unsettling is how predictable it actually is. If someone studied your last 5 years carefully, they could forecast your next 5. Not because you're incapable, not because you lack intelligence, because you're patterned. Your nervous system, it prefers what is familiar, even when what's familiar is painful. The mind does not prioritize happiness. It prioritizes predictability. And predictability feels like control, even when it's self-sabotage. This is the part no one likes to admit. You are not choosing most of your behavior. You are reenacting it. A tone of voice triggers you. A situation feels off. A small rejection happens. And before you consciously think, you are already responding. And then afterward, you justify it. You call it personality. You call it standards. You call it boundaries. You call it, that's just how I am. But it isn't who you are. It's a loop. And until you understand the loop, you will keep living inside it. In previous videos, we broke down the persona, the mask you built to survive. We exposed the shadow, the parts of you that operate underground. Now we go deeper. Because after integration begins, patterns do remain. And if you don't interrupt them deliberately, they will rebuild the old identity quickly. You don't have any effort problems. You don't have any motivation problems. You have a programming problem. And what is programmed can be rewritten, but only if you're willing to see it clearly. No excuses, no dramatization, no self-pity. In this video, we're going to break down what a psychological pattern actually is, why your mind clings to familiar pain, the exact loop that runs beneath your reactions, why awareness alone doesn't free you, and how to interrupt and rewrite the pattern in real time. Not conceptually, Practically. Now, this isn't about becoming someone new. It's about breaking repetition. Because if you don't interrupt the pattern becomes your fate, and you'll call it personality. The pattern reality. Most people believe their life is shaped by decisions. It's not. It's shaped by default responses. And default responses are built through repetition. All right, let's define this. Let's define something clearly. A psychological pattern is not a habit. It's deeper than that. A habit is behavioral. A pattern is emotional and interpretive. It begins with how you interpret events, not the event itself. You see, two people can experience the same criticism, and one hears feedback, the other hears rejection. Two people can experience distance in a relationship. One feels space, the other feels abandonment. The trigger is neutral. The interpretation is patterned. And interpretation happens fast. Faster than conscious thought. Which means by the time you decide how to respond, your nervous system has already chosen. This is why you keep saying, I don't know why I reacted like that. I said I wouldn't do that again. I promised myself this time would be different. You weren't weak. You were automated. And automation feels like personality. It feels natural. It feels justified because it's familiar. All right, here's the deeper layer. Your mind is not trying to create a better future. It is trying to recreate a familiar past, even if the past was unstable, even if it was chaotic, even if it was limiting. Familiar equals predictable. Predictable equals safe. Safe equals survival. This is why people choose similar partners with different names. Hit the same income ceiling repeatedly. Avoid opportunity right before growth. Pull back when the intimacy deepens. Overwork when anxiety rises. Self-isolate when overwhelmed. Different circumstances, same emotional blueprint. And here's where it becomes uncomfortable. You can change environments without changing patterns. You can change cities, jobs, relationships. You can change your friend groups, even your routines, and still recreate the same emotional outcome. Because the environment is not the source. The interpretation is. This is the part most personal development content ignores. It tells you to take action, set goals, be disciplined, be positive. But if your internal interpretation of stress is I'm failing, you will respond defensively. If your interpretation of intimacy is I'll eventually be abandoned, you will self-protect. If your interpretation of success is I don't deserve this, you will destabilize it. The pattern is not random. It is consistent. And consistency reveals structure. Structure means it can be mapped. And if it can be mapped, it can be interrupted. But first, you have to stop calling it fate. Stop calling it bad luck. Stop calling it personality. It's a loop. And you're living inside it. You see, next, we break the loop down piece by piece. You have trigger, interpretation, emotion, behavior, and reinforcement. And you're going to see exactly where you lose control. The pattern loop framework. If you want control, you need structure. So we're going to map the loop, not philosophically, mechanically. Every reoccurring pattern in your life follows this sequence. There's a trigger, interpretation, emotional response, behavior, and reinforcement. There's 5 stages. You miss one, and you stay trapped. All right, let's break it down. You have 1. It's the trigger. The trigger is external. It's a tone of voice, a delay in response, a missed opportunity, a mistake, a look someone gave, a number in your bank account. The trigger is neutral. It does not contain meaning. It contains information. See, meaning comes next. 2, interpretation. This is the real control point. Interpretation happens instantly. It happens before logic. It happens before reasoning. It happens before conscious thought. And interpretation is built from past experiences. It's built from conditioning, a repeated emotional memory. Like if you were criticized often growing up, criticism doesn't register as feedback. It registers as threat. Also, if success created jealousy, or if success created pressure in your past, growth won't feel exciting. It'll feel dangerous. And this stage is silent. You don't hear it consciously, but it shapes everything. We have 3, emotional response. Once interpretation locks in, emotion follows, and it follows fast. Anxiety, anger, shame. Here comes the defensiveness, withdrawal, overcompensation. You think the emotion is caused by the event. It's not. It's caused by your interpretation of the event. Change the interpretation, you change the emotional trajectory. Four, behavior. Emotion creates urgency. Urgency creates behavior. You raise your voice. You shut down. You over-explain. You procrastinate. You overwork. You detach. You text first, or you don't text at all. And the behavior feels justified because the emotion feels real. But remember, the emotion came from interpretation, not reality. We have 5. Reinforcement. This is the part that locks the pattern. After the behavior, one of 2 things happens. You get temporary relief, or you get confirmation. If you overreact and someone backs down, your brain learns intensity equals control. If you withdraw and avoid discomfort, your brain learns avoidance equals safety. If you sabotage success and return to the baseline, your brain learns familiar equals stability. The relief doesn't have to be positive. It just has to be predictable. And predictable feels safe. Now that safety is what reinforces the loop. And once reinforced, the pattern strengthens. This is why repetition feels automatic. Because it is. You trained it through reinforcement over years. Now here's the calm but ruthless truth. You are not stuck. You are reinforced. And reinforcement can be reversed. But you cannot interrupt the loop at the trigger. You can't interrupt it at the emotion. You must interrupt at the interpretation. That's the leverage point. That's where identity shifts. And that's where control begins. So next, we're going to address why awareness alone fails. And why most people, even after learning this, they still repeat. So why awareness alone fails? Most people believe once they understand their patterns, they'll stop repeating them. They won't. Insight is not interruption. Insight is recognition. And recognition without action actually increases frustration. You see, you can know you fear abandonment and still cling. You can know you overreact under stress and still explode. You can know you self-sabotage and still hesitate at the edge of growth. Why? Because awareness lives in the conscious mind. Patterns live in the nervous system. And the nervous system prioritizes familiarity over logic. It doesn't care about what you understand. It cares what feels safe. All right, so let's make this clear. When a trigger hits, your body reacts before your thoughts organize. Your heart rate shifts. Your breathing tightens. Your muscles tense. Your adrenaline moves. And by the time you decide what to do, your physiology is already moving you toward the familiar behavior. That's why people say, I don't know what came over me. You do. Conditioning. And here's where it gets deeper. When you become aware of a pattern, but don't interrupt it, you reinforce shame. And now shame becomes part of the loop. Now you have a trigger, interpretation, emotion, behavior. Here comes the shame and then reinforcement. Now the pattern has emotional armor. And the more shame attached to it, the more likely you are to avoid confronting it directly. This is why self-awareness content alone does not create transformation. It creates observation. And observation without intervention creates internal tension. Yeah, you start noticing your reactions in real time, but you still feel pulled. And that gap between knowing and doing creates self-judgment. That self-judgment becomes another pattern. So if awareness isn't enough, what is? It's interruption. Not analysis, not storytelling, not revisiting the past endlessly. I'm talking interruption. You must create some friction at the interpretation stage before emotion locks in. And this requires something most people avoid. They avoid the discomfort without escape. Because when you interrupt a pattern, you remove the familiar relief. And the nervous system will resist strongly. Growth, it doesn't feel empowering at first. It feels unstable because you're removing predictability. And when predictability disappears, control feels threatened, even if the old pattern was destructive. See, this is where most people retreat. They mistake discomfort for danger, and they return to the loop. If you want control, you must tolerate the instability that comes from interrupting familiarity. All right, next I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. step by step, not conceptually, practically. The pattern rewriting protocol. You don't break patterns emotionally. You break them structurally. Here's the protocol. It's 5 steps. You miss one, and the loop rebuilds. Step 1. Identify the repeated outcome. Not the trigger, not the story, the outcome. And then ask yourself, what keeps happening? Not once, repeatedly. Is it a conflict in relationships? Is it income plateau? Is it overworking into burnout? Pulling away when intimacy deepens? Is it procrastination at the edge of growth? Or is it quitting when progress begins? If it has happened more than 3 times, it is not a coincidence. It's a pattern. Name it clearly, because vague awareness creates vague change. Precision creates leverage. Step 2, identify the emotional trigger. Now ask, what do I feel right before the behavior? Not what I think, what I feel. Is it tension in the chest? Is it fear of being judged? Is it heat in the body? Is it restlessness? Is it pressure to prove? Is it a sudden drop in confidence? You see, because that sensation is the entry point. Patterns begin in the body, not in logic. If you miss this step, you will always react too late. Step 3, identify the core interpretation. Now we go deeper. Ask, what does this moment mean to me? Not intellectually, instinctively. Here's an example. This means I'm not good enough. This means I'm about to lose control. This means they don't respect me. This means I'm about to be abandoned. This means I don't deserve this. This sentence is the root. Find it. Write it down and do not soften it. Because interpretation is the control point, not emotion. Step 4, install a deliberate counter interpretation. And this is where most people fail, because they try to think positive. That doesn't work. You need a counter interpretation that is grounded, that's true, it's stable. Example, old interpretation. This means I'm not good enough. The counter interpretation, this is feedback. Skill can improve. The old, this means I'm about to be abandoned. The counter, discomfort is not rejection. The old, this pressure means I'm failing. The counter, stress Pressure means I'm stretching. It must feel slightly uncomfortable, but believable. Not fantasy and not delusion. This interrupts emotional momentum. All right, now we have step 5. Act before the old emotion fully locks in. This is critical. You must take a different action before the familiar behavior fires automatically. Stay in the conversation. Don't over-explain. Don't withdraw. Don't escalate. Don't avoid. Small behavioral shifts break reinforcement. And without reinforcement, the loop weakens. You will feel instability. That exists. And that's exact. You see, instability means the nervous system is recalibrating. And here's a calm truth. If you repeat this process consistently, the old pattern loses dominance. Not because you forced it out, but because you stopped feeding it. Patterns, they survive on repetition. Interrupt repetition. You rewrite identity. You're not trying to become someone new. You are trying to become less automatic. All right, in the final, I'm going to finish this with, we connect this to identity itself. Because when patterns change, self-concept shifts. And that's where real control begins. Identity is pattern stabilized. Patterns are not random behaviors. They're identity in motion. If you repeat a reaction long enough, you start calling it, that's just who I am. I'm just anxious. I'm just guarded. I'm just intense. I'm just bad with money. I'm just not disciplined. No, you are rehearsed. Identity is repeated interpretation enforced over time. That's all it is. If you repeatedly interpret criticism as rejection, you become defensive. If you repeatedly interpret stress as threat, you become anxious. If you repeatedly interpret opportunity as risk, you become cautious. But that's not essence. It is stabilization. Stabilized pattern becomes personality. Personality becomes your story. Story becomes limitation. And eventually, you stop questioning it. This is why rewriting patterns changes identity. Not through affirmations, not through reinvention. It's through interruption and repetition of new interpretation. The nervous system adapts to what is repeated. If you consistently choose a new interpretation, even when it feels unstable, the body recalibrates. Emotion shifts. Behavior shifts. Reinforcement shifts. And eventually, what once felt forced feels natural. That is identity evolution. Not dramatic, not loud, deliberate. Here's the ruthless truth. If you don't consciously rewrite your patterns, they will quietly dictate your future. You'll call it luck. You'll call it personality. You'll call it circumstances. But it'll be repetition. You are not stuck. You're stabilized. And stabilization can be reprogrammed. Interrupt the loop. Install the new interpretation. Act before the old reinforcement returns. Then repeat. You do this long enough, and your future stops looking like your past. You are not choosing as much as you think, but you can start. This is results.